In today's video, we'll be looking at the ethical issues when using human participants and what should be considered. This is page 56 in the textbook. Now, through today's video, we will discuss and include examples about the ethical issues in human research. Now, this is how your essay question could possibly appear, which is assess the ethical issues in the use of human participants in psychological research. This is a 15-mark question. In the PY3 exam paper, you will have 3 exam questions to choose from, and you will have to answer 2. So this could be a possible one that comes up. Question we are dealing with today, and it's asking us to identify the ethical issues that may happen within this research. So the question does not ask you how to deal with the ethical issues, which is a separate question. It's just asking you to identify them and explain with examples. Now, within our essay, we identify the following 5 areas to write about. Deception, the lack of protection from harm, so this includes physical and psychological harm, lack of informed consent, lack of the right to withdraw, and lack of confidentiality or privacy. Now, for us, we should have already had some interaction with the lack of protection from harm. Now, as we know, with the ethical guidelines, participants have to leave in the same state in which they entered. So, what we need to think about here is what type of harm can be caused from the experiment, physical or psychological. Whether the harm caused during the research was greater than what they usually experience in ordinary life. If this is so, then we need to potentially readjust our experiment so that it is not greater. Now, lack of protection from harm. So with this issue, physical harm is fairly easy for us to measure because the effects can be seen when we're looking at participants. However, psychological states such as stress may be harder for us to measure. Now, take a few seconds to ponder these 2 questions. What are the physical symptoms we can often see? And any research can you think of where we could see these symptoms visibly within the participants? The symptoms which we could physically see are, for example, adrenaline being secreted in the system when someone is stressed, sweating, or nervous laughter. The experiment where we could actually see this in practice is with Milgram, with the signs of extreme tension seen within his participants. So with the nails being put into their skin, the nervous laughter, sweating, etc. All of which we've identified already as physical symptoms of psychological stress. Now, Eisenek in 2005 writes the following. The risk that an individual may be exposed to during a psychological investigation should not be greater than the risk they might have already been expected to face in their everyday life. The questions that we pose here, can we always anticipate the harm that will be caused, and who can we use as an example here? Now, the lack of protection from harm. So it's not always possible to anticipate the harm caused by the researcher. Researchers may maltreat or neglect their participants because they have not acknowledged the potential that harm can be caused, which in turn could lead to further damage of the participants. The extent of the distress that, for our example, can be seen with Milgram's participants, and what he didn't expect to witness the amount of stress and suffering that was caused with his participants. Now, take a few seconds to ponder these questions. What is informed consent? What is the ethical issue with this area? Now, Cardwell in 2003 identifies consent as following. Consent is an ethical requirement which demands that all participants or clients should agree to the procedures which are to take place. Within a research context, this also implies that participants should be free to withdraw from the study at any time without undue pressure being put upon them by the researcher. Now, as part of informed consent, this means that the participant needs to be made aware about the research, about the requirements of the research, as well as their rights as participants. So participants should only take part if they've gained informed consent, as they are aware of their rights, such as their right to withdraw. Now, with informed consent, why is it important for participants to have informed consent? Are there any issues with them having full informed consent? And what are the potential problems with having full informed consent? And we're going to be looking for examples with this one as well. Informed consent should be used when the participant could experience potential harm, psychological or physical. This is all born out of the inhumane experimentation conducted in concentration camps. So issues with informed consent could be the participants adjust their behaviour to please the researcher. So demand characteristics can be exhibited as a result, which obviously means for us we aren't truly measuring real behaviour. We are measuring behaviour in which a participant is readjusting to please the researcher as a result. Now, our example here is obviously, would people volunteer for research if they were fully informed? The example that we've got here is the comparison group in Langer Rodin's deceptive field experiments suffered detrimental effects from the manipulated low levels of responsibility given to them. Had they known the true aims, would any of them have actually participated in the research? Would they have declined and been spared the harmful effects, which continued long after the research ended? So more from this group died, etc. So the fact that if they knew the true aims of the research, would they have participated? And in turn, they would have been avoiding the negative decline in which happened on their life expectancy as a result of participating in Langer and Rodin's research. What is deception is the first bit that we're looking at. Deception is when participants who take part in research must not be deceived at all if possible. So when participants are deceived, we take away their chance to give their fully informed consent to take part in the study. There's obviously sometimes when deception is inappropriate and some where it may be more admissible. So we are making sure that the participants aren't aware of the aims of the research as a result. Now, Cardwell in 2003 writes, deception is the deliberate misleading of participants during a research study, either through telling them lies or by omitting, so forgetting to tell them some important details of the research, such as they are unable to give, so therefore they're unable to give their full informed consent as a result. So why is deception sometimes important, and can you think of any examples of deception as well? Now, deception can sometimes be appropriate as it allows us to measure true behaviour as a result. If we gave a participant full informed consent, we know that sometimes demand characteristics can creep in and they will not act how they would normally do in real life. As we know, honesty is an important thing, but when this is breached, it can have negative consequences, because we are violating their participant rights as a result. Now, the example here that we've got is with Rosenhan's research. The nurses and psychiatrists were greatly deceived by the pseudo patients, and they had their trust abused as a result. And they would have felt like a failure at their job because they weren't able to correctly diagnose. And they would therefore question the authenticity of their future patients. So they'd be a lot more sceptical, as well as that ultimately threatening their quality of care, because they would have been less confident in the approach to their job. Confidentiality. So any knowledge obtained about participants during a study should be kept confidential unless otherwise agreed beforehand with the participants. So participants taking part in psychological research have a right to expect information they provide in the form of data or results and will be treated confidentially, and if circulated, they will not be identifiable to others. So this means that we're removing obviously the crucial information such as name, location, etc. So then if anyone's reading the information or it's been circulated, they cannot pick it out of who it is. This would also mean that identifiers will need to be removed from any interview transcripts. So if they state what area they're from or what school they're currently studying at, they will remove those from the transcripts so that they cannot be identified if this information is leaked or circulated around the psychological community. Obviously, how do you ensure confidentiality? As I previously mentioned, so it's anonymising all data as well as removing all personal identifiers from the information as well. Now, Cardwell in 2003 explains what confidentiality is for us, as they've done throughout most of the presentation. Participants or clients have the right to expect that information gathered during the research or therapy session will not be made public without their consent. So it's all about ensuring that the participants are aware of what is going on with their research, as well as ensuring that their identities are not leaked. Of any examples where confidentiality may have been breached in any of the research that you are aware of? As participants should feel protected and that all information is secured due to the socially sensitive nature of maybe what they are talking about, and that the data is treated accordingly. So it's obviously kept in secure locations and is not kept in a public space in which everyone can access it and find out the participants' information. An example of a case study where confidentiality has potentially been breached was with Ray et al. Potentially breached confidentiality and privacy rights as he had access to intimate medical records of the naval men without their consent. So he was accessing very private information without gaining that participant's authorization. Now, the extension for this essay, what is a public space? So we've gone into confidentiality, but now we're going to be talking about privacy. They are very different terms from one another. So a problem also arises when trying to define what a public space is. In some, we may feel a breach of privacy when we're being observed in a supermarket. Technically, it's a public space. However, the actions in which we are currently committing within that space, we may consider very private. So therefore, when we're being observed in this space, the question of whether it's ethically right is thrown into the mix. An example of this can be seen with Lord Humphreys' tea room trade. Now, the tea room trade is a sociological study using the ethnographic research method. Humphreys posed as a watch queen and sat outside public toilets recording information of these men, which then he later accessed at another point, and he went and interviewed them using this. All of these men thought obviously he was a voyeur and a participant of the sexual acts themselves by being present at that location. Instead, he violated their privacy by recording their information and then publishing it later on. Once his results were published, academic institutions were outraged at his lack of ethical considerations because he failed to recognise potential harm that could arise of him being involved in this type of research. As well as that, remember, homosexuality would have been criminalised, so it would have had serious negative impacts on the participants' lives if their identities were found out from his academic research. You are probably more than well aware of is the right to withdraw. So before the outset of any study, the researcher should make it obvious to the participant that they have the right to withdraw themselves at any time during or after the study, and that the knowledge and or data acquired can be removed from the study and the results. meaning that all the data in which they have participated or contributed to the study will be nullified. They will be removed and they will not contribute to anything. Now, twinning in 1998 defines the right to withdraw as the option for the participant to withdraw from the research at any time should be made clear from the outset. All participants have the right to withdraw the data or any consent previously given. So they can withdraw whilst the research is being conducted or after they've completed the research as well. Now, why do we offer the right to withdraw? We offer the right to withdraw to negate any psychological or physical harm in which the research could have caused. So, when the research is done in a covert manner, it's often impossible for us to get or make the participants aware of their right to withdraw. An example of this can be seen with Lange and Roden. However, there is an extra issue which is thrown into this. When people are paid or offered university credits for their participation, they may not feel like they have actually got this right to withdraw. So they may encounter psychological physical harm due to them feeling that they're expected to continue in the research because they are receiving something from being in it. Participants in Zambada's research felt that they could not leave because they were prisoners and that their guards felt it was their duty to stay and keep order. So they were heavily invested in their roles and they felt like due to them getting some form of credit for this, they were not able to break those roles as a result.